9 bench points. Let that sink in for a moment. 9 total points from an entire bench unit in a professional basketball game at the highest level. That's the reality the Los Angeles Lakers are facing right now, and it's exactly why the next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely critical for the direction of this franchise. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report, your home for the latest updates, breaking news, and all the insider information surrounding our beloved purple and gold. I'm here to bring you the most comprehensive analysis of everything happening in Lakerland. And trust me when I say that what I'm about to share with you today could completely reshape how we approach the second half of this season and beyond. Stay with me, because this story goes much deeper than you might think. Let me paint you a picture of where we are right now as a franchise. We're sitting here less than 2 weeks away from the February 5th trade deadline, and the energy around the league regarding the Lakers is absolutely electric. While teams like the Golden State Warriors and the New York Knicks are dealing with their own massive complications and uncertainty, Los Angeles finds itself in a unique position. We're not in crisis mode, but we're also not where we need to be if we're serious about competing for banner number 18. The front office knows it, Coach JJ Redick knows it, and most importantly, our players know it. Something needs to change, and change is coming whether we're ready for it or not. The inconsistency has been the story of our season so far. One night we look like championship contenders, the next night we're getting embarrassed by teams we should be handling easily. Luka Doncic continues to put up MVP-caliber numbers night after night, carrying this team on his back in ways that remind us why he's one of the most talented players on the planet. LeBron James, in his 23rd season, is still contributing at a level that defies logic and father time. But here's the harsh reality. 2 superstars aren't enough in today's NBA. You need depth, you need versatility, and most importantly, you need players who can step up when your stars are being focused on by opposing defenses. The bench situation that I mentioned at the beginning isn't just a one-game anomaly. That performance against Charlotte was the culmination of a problem that's been festering all season long. When Austin Reeves went down with injury, it exposed just how thin our rotation really is. Deandre Ayton has been up and down, showing flashes of the dominant big man we thought we were getting, but then disappearing for stretches that leave us scratching our heads. The supporting cast hasn't provided the consistent production that championship teams require, and that's put enormous pressure on Doncic and James to do everything. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and this is why I needed to set all that context for you. The Lakers have been actively monitoring the trade market since the season started, and several names have been circulating in conversations around the league. Some of those targets are no longer realistic options, doors that have closed as other teams made moves or players signed extensions. But according to recent reporting from highly credible sources, there are 3 specific players that Los Angeles is seriously considering. 3 athletes who could legitimately address the glaring weaknesses we've been dealing with all year long. The first name that's been generating buzz is Herb Jones from New Orleans. Now, Jones is fascinating because he's exactly the type of defender that modern basketball demands. At 6'7" and 27 years old, he represents that perfect blend of size, athleticism, and defensive instincts that can absolutely suffocate opposing wings. The interesting part about Jones is that he's barely played over the past month, with an ankle injury keeping him sidelined. But here's the thing that caught everyone's attention, the one game he did play during that stretch. It was against us. He came back specifically for the Lakers game and then went right back to being out. That tells you something about how teams view matchups against us and how valuable certain players are in those specific situations. Jones isn't known for his offensive firepower, and this season, his shooting percentages have dipped compared to previous years. But let's think about this strategically for a moment. If we could pair Jones next to Doncic, you're essentially giving Luka the ultimate defensive partner who can take on the toughest perimeter assignments every single night. That means Doncic can focus more energy on the offensive end, where he's already extraordinary, without having to expend as much defending elite wings. Jones earns roughly league average salary this season, which makes him financially feasible without completely destroying our cap flexibility. It's the kind of move that makes sense from both a basketball and business perspective. The third name on this list is Jiren Jackson Jr. from Memphis, and this one comes with a whole different level of intrigue attached to it. Jackson is a former Defensive Player of the Year, standing at 6'11" with the rare ability to protect the rim while also stretching the floor with his three-point shooting. He's averaging 18.5 points per game this season while shooting just over 36% from beyond the arc. That's the kind of versatility that opens up entire offenses, especially when you have a playmaker like Doncic who can exploit the space that shooting big men create. The situation in Memphis adds another layer to this possibility. With Ja Morant potentially on his way out and the Grizzlies possibly entering a rebuilding phase, there's growing speculation around the league that Jackson might not be thrilled about the direction of the franchise. At just 26 years old, he's in his prime and might be looking for a situation where he can compete for championships immediately rather than waiting through a multi-year rebuild. This is where Rich Paul's comments came into play, suggesting a potential framework involving Austin Reaves heading to Memphis in exchange for Jackson coming to Los Angeles. Now, I know Reaves is set to be a free agent this summer anyway, which complicates things, but the framework of that type of deal is worth exploring. Jackson would give us something we desperately need, a legitimate rim protector who doesn't sacrifice offensive spacing. Ayton hasn't quite been the defensive anchor we hoped for, and while he's got physical tools, Jackson brings proven defensive impact at the highest level. We've seen Doncic thrive playing alongside versatile, athletic big men during his time in Dallas, and Jackson fits that profile perfectly. Yes, injuries are a concern with Jackson's history, but at some point you have to take calculated risks if you want to make significant improvements to your roster. But here's where we get to the player that I think represents the most intriguing possibility of all three, the one that could genuinely transform our trajectory for years to come. I'm talking about Jonathan Kuminga from the Golden State Warriors. Now, before I dive deep into why Kuminga makes so much sense for us, let me explain the situation he's currently facing in the Bay Area. Kuminga is 23 years old, loaded with physical talent, and was supposed to be the next cornerstone piece for Golden State's future after Curry, Klay, and Dre age out. But his development has been inconsistent, his role has fluctuated dramatically, and now with Jimmy Butler's torn ACL changing Golden State's entire calculus, Kuminga's future there is more uncertain than ever. The Warriors are in a tough spot. They're trying to maximize the final years of Curry's prime while also developing young talent for the future, and those two goals often conflict with each other. Kuminga needs minutes and touches to develop, but when you're trying to win games with a 36-year-old superstar, you can't always afford to be patient with a young player's growing pains. This creates a situation where a change of scenery could benefit everyone involved. Golden State gets assets they can use to either compete now or build for the future, and Kuminga gets to go somewhere with a clearer path to consistent playing time and a defined role. Now let's talk about why Kuminga specifically makes sense for the Lakers. First and foremost, he's an oversized wing at 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan who can defend multiple positions. In today's NBA, you absolutely must have wing defenders who can switch across positions and guard everyone from point guards to power forwards. Kuminga has that physical profile and has shown flashes of being exactly that type of defender. On the offensive end, he's got the athleticism to finish above the rim, he's developing a more consistent three-point shot, and he's comfortable handling the ball in transition. That versatility is exactly what we need next to Doncic. Think about it from a strategic standpoint. Doncic is at his best when he's got athletes running the floor, cutting to the basket, and providing vertical spacing. Kuminga excels in exactly those areas. He's explosive in transition, he's a lob threat, and he's got the strength to finish through contact. Pairing Kuminga with Doncic could unlock offensive dimensions that we simply don't have with our current roster construction. And here's the beautiful part. Kuminga is still on his rookie-scale contract, which means he's affordable for this season and potentially next depending on extension talks. That gives us financial flexibility that we wouldn't have with some other trade targets. The defensive fit is equally compelling. Right now, we're asking Doncic to do too much defensively, and while he's improved in that area, it's still not his strength. If you bring in Kuminga, suddenly you can hide Doncic on the weakest offensive player and let Kuminga take on the premier scoring threats. That's how you optimize your roster and put players in positions to succeed on both ends of the floor. Look at championship teams throughout history. They all have multiple defenders who can guard at a high level, allowing their offensive stars to conserve energy for where they provide the most value. But let's address the elephant in the room. What would it take to actually acquire Kuminga? Golden State isn't going to just give him away, even with the uncertainty surrounding his future there. They're going to want assets in return, whether that's draft picks, young players, or some combination of both. The Lakers' draft capital situation isn't great after previous moves, but we do have tradable contracts and potentially some younger pieces that Golden State might value if they're committing to a rebuild or retool. The negotiations would be complex, there's no question about that, but the framework for a deal exists if both sides are motivated to make something happen. I also want to address the concerns that some of you might have about Kuminga. Yes, his production this season hasn't been what we hoped for. Yes, there are questions about his consistency and his basketball IQ at times. But here's what I would say to that. Environment matters tremendously in player development. Some guys thrive in certain systems and struggle in others. Some players need a clearly defined role to excel, while others need freedom to make mistakes and learn. Kuminga hasn't had that stability in Golden State, and a fresh start in Los Angeles with a coaching staff that believes in him could be exactly what unlocks his potential. We've seen this movie before in the NBA. Players who seem stuck in neutral on one team completely transform their careers after a trade. Sometimes all it takes is a new environment, a new role, and a new level of belief from the organization. Kuminga has all the physical tools to be an elite two-way player in this leg. The question is whether we're willing to bet on his potential and give him the opportunity to realize it. From my perspective, considering our current situation and the limited options available on the trade market, it's absolutely a bet worth making. Now I need to be realistic with you about the broader context here. Whatever move we make, whether it's for Kuminga, Jones, Jackson, or someone else entirely, it's not going to solve all of our problems overnight. We're still going to need the young guys to step up, we're still going to need better bench production across the board, and we're still going to need some injury luck to go our way. But adding a high-level talent who fits our needs would give us a significantly better chance to compete in a loaded Western Conference. That's all you can ask for at the trade deadline. Put yourself in position to succeed and then see if your stars can elevate when it matters most. The timing of all this is crucial too. LeBron James and Austin Reeves are both set to become free agents this summer, which adds urgency to our decision-making. If we're going to convince LeBron to run it back for another year, we need to show him that we're committed to building a championship-caliber roster around him and Doncic. If we're going to retain Reeves, we need to demonstrate that this team is heading in the right direction and that he'll have a chance to compete for titles here. Standing pat and hoping things improve organically isn't a viable strategy when you have that kind of talent and that kind of timeline. Rob Pelinka and the front office understand this reality. They know that the margin for error is incredibly thin when you're trying to maximize the careers of all-time great players. They know that the window to compete is now, not 3 years from now after a rebuild. That's why I genuinely believe we're going to see significant movement before the deadline. It might not be a blockbuster trade that dominates headlines for days, but I expect meaningful additions that address our weaknesses and give us a better chance in the playoffs. And here's my optimistic take on all of this, because I do believe there's reason for genuine hope. We have Luka Doncic in his absolute prime, playing at a level that few players in league history have ever reached. We have a coaching staff led by JJ Redick who understands modern basketball and how to maximize offensive talent. We have role players who, despite their struggles, have shown flashes of being legitimate contributors in the right situations. If we can add one or two pieces that fit what we're trying to do, there's no reason we can't make noise in the playoffs and potentially compete for a championship. The path forward is clear. We need defensive versatility on the perimeter to take pressure off Doncic. We need additional scoring punch that can punish opponents when they load up to stop our stars. We need players who embrace their roles and understand that winning requires sacrifice and collective effort. Jonathan Kuminga, with his combination of age, athleticism, defensive potential, and offensive upside, checks all those boxes. He's not a finished product, but he's got the ceiling to become exactly what we need him to be. So where does all of this leave us heading into the final stretch before the deadline? I think we're in a position where meaningful change is not only possible but probable. The front office has identified clear targets, the coaching staff has communicated what they need to be successful, and ownership understands the stakes of this season. Whether it's Kuminga, Jones, Jackson, or someone we haven't even discussed yet, I'm confident that help is on the way. The question isn't if we'll make a move, it's what move we'll make and whether it'll be enough to push us over the top. Now I want to hear from you because your perspective matters just as much as mine. Do you think Jonathan Kuminga is the right fit for this Lakers team? Would you be willing to part with draft picks or young assets to bring him in? Or would you rather pursue Herb Jones for his defensive prowess or Jiren Jackson for his two-way impact? What combination of players would you target if you were running the front office right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I read every single one and I love hearing different perspectives on these complicated decisions. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Lakers News Fan Report. The next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely wild with trade rumors, breaking news, and potentially franchise-altering moves. You don't want to miss a single update, and I'll be here bringing you everything as it happens with the same detailed analysis and insider perspective you've come to expect. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it valuable, share it with your fellow Lakers fans, and let's keep this community growing as we navigate through what promises to be a pivotal moment in our team's history. Until next time, let's go Lakers.